Hi, I'm Janess. I'm a mom of four. Today I'm going to tell you a story about my son Brady and when he was 7 months old, how he got infant botulism. Today is Rare Disease Day, and so I thought it was fitting that I tell the story today. Now I'm just going to give a little warning. It's a sad thing that he got that, and I don't want to post too many sad things on my page, but it's also a great thing because we really grew as parents, and this is a type of condition that is so rare. None of your children are ever going to get this. Like, if you find this page and your baby got it, like, 200 kids in the US get it a year. Like, it's super rare. So, anyway, that's just a heads up. And maybe you've seen my short of it. So if you haven't, go check that out and you can see just a little snippet of him in the hospital. But anyway, I'm going to tell you about it. When he was 7 months old, he started to crawl. He learned how to crawl. And, he was at like 6.5 months. And like 2 weeks later, he started rolling around to get everywhere. And I'm like, why is he rolling around to get everywhere? Like, he was just crawling. I'm like, oh, it's probably fine. And then some other things that happened was he just started solids and he started getting constipated. And to me, it wasn't that big of a deal because he was always constipated, always had colic, stomach aches, things like that. And I was like, it's fine. But it went on to be like 7 days. And I'm like, when is he going to poop? Like, I stopped the solids. I was just nursing him. And then the other thing is that my milk supply, I was just like engorged because he actually wasn't drinking and I didn't know that. So those were the things that like were so subtle, I didn't even know. But then it kind of took a turn and all of a sudden he wasn't drinking at all. And he was moving less and, he just seemed like blah. And I'm like, he's not sick, he must have a virus. Like, there's no fever, he must have a virus or something. So I thought maybe it was a virus and it would pass, and I took him to the chiropractor for the constipation, and nothing was really helping, but, he was happy still and content. But then he started, like, drinking weird, and I'm like, what is going on? And I'm like, maybe he has a bellyache because he can't go to the bathroom. I'm like, I'm gonna give it another day and see. But then, like, in the course of that day, this was the weekend now. It all like kind of happened really fast. This was the weekend, so like we went to a family doctor, so they didn't have hours on the weekends, but either way, he wasn't like in distress or anything. But then he started losing like his ability to move his legs and arms. Like, he was still moving them, but he was just kind of like limp, kind of. He wasn't lethargic, he was like fully aware and everything. So I'm like, what is this? I'm like, if he can't hold up his neck, I'm going to take him to the hospital. Well, that night, he stopped holding up his neck. And I'm like, okay, this is weird. So, like, I wasn't as calm as I am now. At 3 a.m., my mom and I went to the hospital with Brady. And we went in, and it wasn't like a children's hospital or anything. It was just like a normal hospital. There wasn't even like a children's wing, I don't think. So they were like, okay, he needs fluids because he had like very minimal wet diapers over the course of the day. So they go to put an IV in, they can't get it. So I'm going to tell you this. I Googled all of his symptoms. Like, I used to be Dr. Google. I still kind of am, but I would Google everything. And the one thing that popped up was like infant botulism. And I'm like, how would he have gotten that though? And it's so rare, but all of his symptoms exactly fit. So like, I brought it up to the doctor, and the doctor like kind of laughed. He's like, no, not infant botulism. I'm like, okay. And he said the same thing. Like, how would he have gotten it? I'm telling you, it's so rare. So then we were just all perplexed. They didn't x-ray, nothing in his belly, like nothing that they could see. We're in there, and like hours are going by, like they're not figuring it out, and it's really hard because it seems like he's just dwindling. Like, now at this point, he doesn't even want to suck on his pacifier. His eyelids are kind of starting to close. He's not moving his arms, he's not moving his legs. So then they said, you have to go to the children's hospital. And so There were two options that we could go to. We went to the one that was closer, which I'm very glad about, but we went to the children's hospital that was close, and immediately when I went in there, I'm like, do you think it's infant botulism? Like, literally everyone I talked to, I'm like, could it be infant botulism? And everyone kind of said no. Like, maybe a couple of doctors there were a lot of doctors, this was a teaching school to a teaching hospital. Everyone pretty much was like, I don't think so. So this was like the hardest day for me. So they end up putting barium, giving him a barium enema, and then did an x-ray. Nothing was lodged. And they didn't think so because his belly was soft. But they did see like a lot of trapped air. So then the next thing that they checked was, so the surgical team was out. So then the next thing that they checked was they wanted to see if he had an infection anywhere. So they're like, we're gonna do spinal tap, we're gonna start him on antibiotics anyway. So they did. Immediately, nothing grows. I think they're like checking it because it's kind of like a serious thing. But I mean, you have to give it 3 days to grow, but they still have him on like 3 really strong antibiotics, IV. Then they did a urine test, and like nothing was coming up, but it's only day 1, so we're like still hopeful. But it's like he's really bad at this point. Like if it was anything, like he would have a fever. No fever. So I'm a mess. I actually, during his spinal tap, I went to Panera Bread. Like, I was so out of it. I didn't not know what was going on. Like, I had my husband there. My husband's parents were there. My mom was there. I was like, I just need to go eat something and, like, imagine that this is not my life right now. Because to me, it was like my baby's dying. So, and to everyone else, nobody knew what was happening. So then I go to Panera and I'm eating. They did the spinal tap. They did everything, which I'm thankful for that I didn't have to be there, even though I probably should have. So I come back and there's no answers. And we're just sitting there. I'm like next to him. It's just really sad. At this point, he's on oxygen because his O2 levels were like at 80. And so it was getting to be nighttime, and my husband's like, I think you should come home for the night. I'm like, I'm not leaving my baby here. And my mom is like, you know what? I'm gonna stay, you go home. I'm like, we live 30 minutes away from the hospital, 35 minutes. I'm like, I am not leaving him. So finally I'm like, fine, I will go home. Because they basically made me go home, my mom and my husband. So I went home. And I obviously did not sleep, but I was Dr. Google, and I just Googled and Googled. And I am 100% sure that he has infant botulism. Like, there is not a doubt in my mind. Every single thing. So, like, the telltale signs are like, all the things I mentioned. Constipation. They lose their muscles, the ability to use their muscles. They lose neck control. They lose their sucking. They can't open their eyes, like all those things. It is just like they sit frog-legged, like it's just a weird thing that they do. And so I was so like wanting to go to the hospital. Maybe I got an hour of sleep. Finally, in the morning came, and I'm like, we are going to the hospital. So I'm like, I'm gonna tell them it's infant botulism. So we go, and the doctor who was on all night was like, you know what, like, it doesn't look like infant botulism because he didn't dwindle fast enough. So if it was infant botulism, like, you just like go, it's just decline. So I was like, so they're in the car, they're like, it might be like a neurological issue, and basically something that is really bad, like a neurological issue that maybe like couldn't be a turnaround from. Okay. So we're in the car, and deep in my heart, I'm like, I know that it's infant botulism. And the reason why I was happy about that is because you get better from it. And there's, so I am just in the car, and I am screaming. Like, I am just so upset. And my husband's driving at this point. So we get to the hospital, and I go to see Brady, and I look at him, and he declined so bad from the previous day that I was so happy, because I'm like, this is infant botulism, because he did decline so badly. So I saw my mom. My mom is like, I think it's infant botulism. Her sister had called her too and was like, look this up. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it is. It so is. So at this point, I'm like, now this is the big thing. Okay, so there is an antitoxin for infant botulism, but it is $80,000 and it's made in California. It has to be flown from California, especially, and it's a lot of money. So your insurance company is not going to just say, yes, we'll get you the antitoxin. They have to be sure that the baby has infant botulism. And the only way to be sure is if they have a stool sample. But your baby's not pooping, so you can't have a stool sample. So the other alternative is to have 2 doctors agree that it's infant botulism. So at this point, the doctor comes in and I'm like, I know it is. And they're kind of not listening to me that much. And he has all his students with him. And I understand, like, doctors have a hard job, and there's so many other things that I'm sure it could have been. But he left the room, and the thing about the antitoxins, the faster you get it in them, the faster it'll turn around. So you wait another day, it's going to take so much longer to recover all that muscle memory. Okay? So at this point, I said, the doctor's on the floor with all the attendings. My mom is like, you need to, like, tell them. This has to be that they get the antitoxin right away. And my mom was reading about how urgent it was to get the antitoxin, because, like, the sooner you get it, the better outcome, or the faster recovery. So I went on the floor of the hospital, and I just, like, I wasn't screaming or anything, but I was stern, and I'm like, listen, I know that it is infant botulism. Like, do you believe in mother's intuition? And the doctor honestly was like, yeah, I do. And I'm like, I know deep down in my heart that it is infant botulism. And the doctor was like, okay, listen, if the other neurologist who comes in agrees that it's infant botulism, then I'll agree. And I was like, okay. The other doctor, who was the first female doctor out of all the ones, so I saw like 7 at this point, she comes in and she looks at him and she's like, oh, classic infant botulism, classic. And I'm like, yeah, right? Like, this is like the most excited that I've been, you know. And she's like, the other doctor came in, you know, they agreed, they did it, and that's it. That other doctor eventually apologized to me in the elevator. The way he apologized, I didn't really like it. He said, hey, listen, I'm sorry. You know, we do these protocols because that medicine is so expensive. I'm like, well, my child's life is priceless. So, but, you know, I was polite. I was like, okay, I understand, you know, just like that. But anyway, this neurologist was so nice. She was the best. I have a picture of her and Brady after he was all better. And yeah, like I just love that she just immediately knew. She was so smart, like immediately. So anyway, we had to wait now for the antitoxin. And the bad part about this was the next thing that would go was like his breathing. So what did they have to do? They had to intubate him. And that was really, really hard for me. And so they intubated him. He was on the ICU, and, you know, you have to keep him really safe, no infections, things like that. And thank God the antitoxin came the next day. They said it would be like 2 days. And it came the next day, and literally within hours, like, he started opening his eyelids a little bit, like just squinting. And, you know, eventually he moved a little, but it took a few days still. It took actually like 6 days until they could extubate him, which was really hard for me to see. So they had to sedate him, and it was really hard recovery off of sedation, stuff like that. So the rest of the story was hard. It was. I mean, in the hospital, our next goal was him pooping. He hadn't pooped in like 21 days by the end of this. So then we had to go to rehab and stuff like that. He still didn't, you know, he had to learn how to suck again. he had the NG tube and an NJ tube at one point. I was pumping, losing milk supply. My sister, my friend had to give me milk. There was so much that went on, but you know what? He got better, and it was so beautiful to see him walk and crawl, and then eventually, like a month later, he learned how to walk. It was a very long month. I thank God every day that I didn't have more kids, because I could just spend my time focused on him. I was taking 2 college courses at the time. I was working full time. I obviously wasn't working. I stopped working for 6 weeks or however long I could take off. And you know what? He got better. And it's just every year at these on these days, like, I just think about him, and I'm just so thankful that we have him. And I'm so thankful that, like, it did teach me a lot. And you know, some days when he's hard, like, I actually think back on that day, on those days. So yeah, that's my story of our rare condition. And listen, as a parent, you're gonna go through everything. Each of my kids have gone through something that made me crazed, like worried and stressed out. But you really have to find the joy in these moments. And it's easier to find the joy now, but I think as a 4th time around parent, it's easier to find joy in general. So yeah, if you have any questions, put them in the comments, and please like and subscribe to our page from our family. Bye.